excited to welcome to the stage Jim Thompson, Bitwave CRO, and Mustafa from Secure Digital. Secure Digital is one of our presenting sponsors today, so thank you so much, Secure Digital Markets. And please, they're going to share a little bit more about liquidity and how enterprises are managing their digital asset treasuries.
All right, Mustafa, welcome. Good to be here. Thank you, Nathan, Amy, everyone, for playing. It's been a really, really fun day so far. So we are talking about digital asset treasury for enterprises. That can mean a few different things. So obviously, DATs are in the news. We're going to talk about that. We will talk a little bit of kind of framework of like other forms of corporate treasury and what they've been doing with digital assets over the years. But super excited to have Mustafa here, who is in the weeds of this stuff day to day, which is great because that's what we like to do at EDAS. So Mustafa, maybe just start by giving us some of your background and what you do.
100%. Thank you. And first of all, thank you for hosting Nathan and Amy, and pleasure to meet you. And this is what an incredible city and incredible venue. So Secure Digital Markets, we're an OTC trading desk. We've been around since 2017, handled billions of dollars of transactions. We have a spot trading desk, we have a lending desk, and we have a derivatives desk. Quite well diversified jurisdictionally, and we've been kind of in the weeds helping a number of different market sectors get exposure to digital assets or offload their exposure. And the other side of that is we work with quite a couple of groups that are a little bit deeper in the cross-border payments. So working across, call it the medium of exchange groups and then the store of value groups.
Awesome. So for many years, we've been talking about Bitcoin on the balance sheet, right? That's been a thing. But why the last 12 months, 6 months are you so busy talking to DATs? Like what's been going on? What's driving that?
Yeah. So I mean, historically, as you mentioned, there's a lot of businesses in this industry that hold Bitcoin on their treasury. But MicroStrategy kickstarted this entire wave, and ultimately people have picked up this trend, and we went from MicroStrategy being the sole single DAT technically available on the market to now having over 150 different digital assets treasuries publicly listed across international markets. So this trend really only started over the last 12 months due to the ease of accounting rules in order for this to progress and to be a reality. And people that didn't have as much capital to climb that challenge in the regulatory hurdle, it's become a lot easier. So that opened up the floodgates.
It's really nice to be on a panel on the other side of the regulatory headwinds that every panel talks about. So that's good. We're on the other side of that. And then maybe to kind of frame for the audience, right, we've got a few different profiles that we were talking about. The Teslas, the SpaceX, I think they just crossed $1 billion of Bitcoin on the balance sheet, right? So these are like traditional enterprises that decided to adopt Bitcoin on their balance sheet for various different reasons. And then we've got a profile of companies like Bitwave and some other folks in the room that are crypto native. They're generating revenue in Ethereum, in Solana, in Bitcoin in different ways. And you're keeping that on your balance sheet just as part of your normal operations. And then this third profile that we're going to spend some more time on, where it's not just a part of your treasury. It's not a hedge. It's not like something you're seeking yield on. It's actually becoming the identity of your company. It's becoming the entire profile. I didn't realize we're up to 150. That's crazy. So we've got 150 of those companies doing that today. Are you? You're primarily working with that third profile today. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think that's what's picked up a lot of traction over the last 12 months. But historically, we've worked with all three. I think what's most interesting about this third category is that there's an active portfolio management that is being considered as part of the core operation. So you're effectively investing in almost their ability to execute on that treasury strategy. And beyond that treasury strategy, you're also investing in their ability to execute hedges and execute their ability to generate additional capital in order to manage effectively how compressed or not compressed their MNAV is and how they're taking advantage of that. So that's probably the biggest difference, is that you're betting on an actively managed team with an actively managed balance sheet versus as you mentioned Tesla, or as you mentioned some of the private companies like Block, for example, Jack Dorsey's company. They're not selling that Bitcoin. They're keeping that as a long-term play as part of their balance sheet. And ultimately, I don't think they ever have plans to liquidate that. Whereas these DATs, you're going for yield at the end of the day, and you're going for growth.
Yeah, so we can talk about that a little bit more. And when I started my career on like traditional corporate treasury, they were teaching us the principles, and it was all about like mitigating risk and being conservative with your capital, and then seeking yield within that framework. So we're a long way away from that on this side, as even like different alt tokens and doing more aggressive things to seek that yield, right? But so you really work with these companies from A to Z. Maybe just start with us at the A level as like you start to get this set up from a structure standpoint. What are you hearing from folks? What are they considering as they want to embark on this endeavor?
Absolutely. I think overall we've seen a variety of different structures, but what's been most interesting is either the direct listing or the RTO, and that's been primarily set up to help incentivize these the private investors in the round, to help them kind of gain optionality, and to help expedite the process of acquiring the digital assets. So when you're contemplating these structures, you have to consider the balance sheet of the company that you're acquiring. There's pros and cons to getting an entity that has some debt, but ideally you're going for a company with a bit of excess balance sheet capital that is also trading at effectively below the value of that balance sheet. There's a limited set of these companies available out there, and all the bankers across the major financial hubs are actively communicating with these companies and the different groups that are considering these DAS strategies. So that's base layer one, is starting with your banker groups, and we've been lucky to be in touch with a lot of these groups to help at the ground level. Structuring is probably, as we've all learned and learned a lot more about today, is definitely number two. Is how you set up your operational processes is extremely important, as these are publicly listed companies. So you can't afford to operate it like a startup when you have regulatory guidelines to abide by. So you have to consider the custodians. You have to consider the covenants and the risk management strategies that you're going to deploy. It doesn't even mean just pricing risk, but it just means that the custodian, the multi-party console system that you're using, the different individuals and transaction authorization policies that you have in place. These all come to play well before you establish the digital asset treasury.
Yeah, and sometimes for a lot of folks in this room, we will work with crypto native companies that actually don't care about their accounting as much as we would like. And we really like people that care about audit readiness and getting their books in order. If you're publicly traded, you need to do that, of course. So it's been fun working with some of those DATs. And I guess it's interesting, too, for us. Sometimes we engage with folks that are really deep crypto native, that have been there. So even folks that have worked with some of our partners and gone in-house as like a treasurer role. And I don't need to educate them on Bitcoin. We start talking to them, right? They're much deeper than me, and maybe their Bitcoin maxis could educate me. But then sometimes we're working with folks that like they brought in a CFO to be that like professional entity, but they don't actually have a lot of exposure to crypto. And so that impacts obviously how we work with them. Does that impact you guys as well on some of this consultation of how you go through the custody and the governance and all those things?
Yeah, of course. I mean, top of mind is how we can help them get that set up, and I think we actually help them in some interesting ways, in that rather than them having to set up their own hardware wallets, we can directly link to their custodian. And as a non-custodial business ourselves, when we're helping clients execute and purchase these digital assets, we're immediately moving on to settlement within quite often as soon as the trade is conducted, but sometimes in under 24 hours. And so we kind of save them a bit of additional steps there, save them additional steps in kind of that key man risk of having to handle the keys and handle the digital assets. In some of the reporting, as it makes it quite a lot more efficient on their end to deal with a single entity rather than go out and do the smart order routing across 10 different platforms themselves and handle all the transactional IDs of all the transfers that they've done. So that's quite a lot of advice that we give these clients, and especially on the executional side.
Yeah, love it. And one example we found an hour ago, maybe I have an introduction for you based off of this, right? One of the companies we were working with, a lot of folks in this room can relate to it. Mackenzie, when you're scoping out a client and they say, this is how many wallets I have, this is how many transactions I have, and then you get into an implementation and you actually see what's going on. We had a situation where it should have been about 100 trades, but actually it was about 1 million fills related to that Bitcoin activity, right? So you plug that into Bitwave, all of a sudden it looks a lot different. You need to handle those operations a lot differently, and folks like Secure can actually help with that and obfuscate some of that complexity.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's been a common theme. You really cannot execute $100 million in a single chunk or $1 billion in a single chunk. I mean, you could. There's definitely block orders that we can kind of help curate for the client in those types of transactions. But when you have, again, as you said, 1 million fills, you want to have a succinct summary, and we can provide you with a succinct trade summary that makes everybody in this room's life quite a lot easier in handling the reporting.
Yeah, love it. Any best practice, like if folks are in the room and they're working with a dad or somebody's starting a dad, any best practices that we haven't hit on that you want to talk about, or anything that they should definitely avoid?
Yeah, I think generally exploring. There's quite a lot. If you're advising a dad and you've been brought on as kind of the accountant, there's a lot of responsibility in how the strategy is being publicized as a public traded company, and how their fills are being reported. I think that we've seen quite a large variety of how fills are reported publicly, and there's pros and cons to that. And I think that specifically the groups here in this audience, you have the ability to help your client optimize for how these fills and are reported. If you've raised a couple $100 million and you've only executed $250 million at a specific, time and period, then you can publicize that, and you can publicize how much is left in the treasury. But all of that has to come into play with what the MNAV is. So we've developed a few formulas to help our clients kind of establish the best time to execute, the best method of execution, and then the best time to report those fills, in order to optimize for future raises, as that's one of the largest things that these debts are going for afterwards.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Like you'd think, I think from the outside looking in, like, hey, we're just buying an asset, we're putting on the trade. There's not too much complexity, right? And there is a lot under the hood. Okay, so we start with MicroStrategy. We've got Tom Lee and his hair on CNBC and pumping ETH bags. We've got now some other coins, XRP. I saw James here earlier. We got XRP being bought, Avalanche. We got some Ava folks here. Where do you think this is headed? We were talking about the story protocol earlier. Like, is this going to keep going? Do you have a sense of like where this tops, or if this is good or bad? Tell us some predictions, maybe.
Maybe we'll end with the predictions, but it's funny. I think just recently I saw some DeFi protocols, starting some DATs, and we're going full circle, with like DeFi protocols being publicly listed, and then the publicly listed companies are going on chain. So we're gonna see some weird circular finance happening here. I think multi-managed portfolios are probably next. There's a few that are coming up, Reserve being one of them. There's a massive trend. I think in the lending and credit markets. I think that's where we're gonna see kind of this, as Michael Saylor calls it, the Cambrian explosion. You're gonna see that's how we're gonna see a massive boom. There's gonna be quite a lot of debt taken on by some of these groups, and that's gonna lead to some bad actors potentially, naturally. Again, we're only at 150 treasuries, and some of them are already not, performing as strong as others, and so we're gonna see. I think that's how it's gonna start, as kind of the first bust of this narrative. But I do think that as the fiat debasement narrative is kind of picking up within TradFi worlds, as we've been talking about in the digital asset industry ever since I've joined the industry. That's kind of one of the biggest reasons we all bought Bitcoin. But that's going to cause this next stage of acceleration for this market cycle. But then it's also going to lead to at least a few bad actors. Hopefully nothing to the likes of SBF, but that's what's going to cause a bit of a bust. But who knows? Maybe it's a super cycle.
Oh, those are dangerous words there. Fingers crossed, super cycle. I have seen some folks say, right, like, is this going to be the thing that blows off the top, and some concern there. I mean, gold, like I just reading this morning, gold is actually peaking, so currency debasement will be interesting to track. You saw Michael Saylor at PubKey, right? So you got a little like Bitcoin aura rubbed off on you?
It's the same jacket.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good. And then the other, we'll close. Maybe we were joking about maybe like when a celebrity becomes the face of the DAT. Like it's really helpful for these companies if they've got somebody on TV like Tom Lee, going out there and talking about them. So if you guys see like you said like a Kim K Bitcoin DAT or something like that come out in the world, like probably be worried. We may be at the top, right?
I think Katy Perry painting her nails in the past was one cycle. And so if she leads the DAT, we're in big trouble.
Okay, good. All right, we'll stick to the safe DATs, the ones that are working with these folks in the room, doing things the right way. Anything else before we close out?
No, that's it. Would love to chat with anyone considering launching one, or just in general anyone looking for better execution. We'd love to chat afterwards.
Awesome. Thanks, Mustafa.
Thank you.